Hi, everybody. My name is Holly, and welcome back to the Healthy Honeys podcast. This is part 2 in our birth series and the second ever episode, so thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who don't know, I recently gave birth to our first baby, a little girl, and it was the best day of my life. Absolute peak experience. For a rundown on my pregnancy and the mentality I had going into giving birth, please check out the last episode, my wild pregnancy after chemo/chronic illness. Also, keep in mind that this is a birth story, so there's going to be talk about bodily fluids, discussion of body parts, and, all that. Fair warning. So I had an autonomous, medically unassisted home birth. Some people would call it a free birth, but from what I understand about free birth, that's usually when you don't have anyone there, like you have your partner there, but you don't have anybody helping. And I did have my traditional non-medical midwife, Michelle. I really think that this was a freeing experience because we decided to do it at home with no one pretending to be an authority over us. There was no transition from home to hospital. I was able to be in any position I wanted to. I didn't have anyone telling me to not eat or drink or to get out of the tub when I was ready to push. And if you remember from last episode, I was considered high risk. If I went through the medical system to birth my daughter, they would have been doing the most. Some people will say, oh, well, that didn't happen with my hospital birth. But you have to understand that it's the protocol for anyone with my previous health issues to go through a high-risk clinic and give birth with all the restrictions that you hear about in nightmare birth stories. And it's actually against hospital policy to give birth in water here. You're allowed to labor in the tub, but as soon as you get to the point of pushing, you have to get out. And that can be seriously detrimental to the birth process if you don't feel the need to get out, or you can actually go backwards and have your cervix close when there's an unnatural transition like that happening. So I'm really glad that we decided to do this at home without any medical assistance. Though I should clarify, as a high-risk patient, they wouldn't have even allowed me to be in the tub or near a tub or in any of the hospitals near me that have tubs. So let's get into it. This is my favorite thing to talk about. Okay, I knew something was off the night before because I ate an entire gluten-free pizza by myself, and that was after 2 months of my stomach feeling too full to eat more than a small meal at a time. Suddenly, I was able to eat a ton. I felt a couple weeks before my baby's head, she felt like she was swimming into my pelvis, and I got lightning crotch pains. But she must have dropped even more because my stomach was ready to be filled up and get enough energy for the next day. Also, surprisingly, I had an amazing sleep that night too, after 3 months of half sleeping on the recliner to avoid heartburn. The next morning, I woke up to the feeling of my bed being completely soaked. It was 8 a.m. and I wasn't sure if I peed myself again, like I was talking about in the last episode, but I called my husband over from his office. He works at home, and I told him, I think my water broke. Does this smell like pee to you? Anyway, after that, we were like, whoa, okay, so it's probably happening soon. I stood up and started feeling some light contractions, so I called my midwife. She said, okay, I'll pack my bag in case things get more intense. Keep me posted. I was so excited, but also oh man, we were planning on going grocery shopping today. We don't have any of the stuff I wanted to have before I gave birth. At this time, I was 37 weeks plus 4 days, and I was so sure I was going to be going past 40 weeks. I personally was 2 weeks late, and all my family have their babies on or after their due date, but I was wrong. She really wanted out of there. I can't believe it now, but we were actually considering still going grocery shopping with the both of us at this point. And wow, thank goodness we did not do that. That would have been so awful. I lost my mucus plug and decided against it, but I did ask my husband to still go because I wanted ice cream during the labor, and I had made a list of items we needed postpartum, like adult diapers and paper plates. Luckily as well, it was pickup day for raw milk too, so my midwife was able to bring some when she arrived. Around 10:30, my husband left, and by this time my contractions were getting to the point where I was doing silly sounds during the painful parts. I was still able to talk, but I was blowing raspberries. I had planned to actually listen and dance to a great playlist made by Epoch Rising on Instagram. I was going to listen to that during early labor to speed things up, but I had to stop after doing that once because things sped up way too fast. I had to not do a lot of things I'd actually planned during labor because I didn't want things to go too fast when I was completely alone. I was going to drink red raspberry leaf tea because I noticed before it had made my practice contractions really intense, and I read that it sped up labor, but no chance. I'd also planned on doing some extracurricular activities, if you know what I mean, but again, no chance. I'd called Michelle again by then, and she was on her way, but she lives a few hours away from us, and I wanted to make sure that she and preferably my husband were there before I started going into active labor, so I was just sitting and listening to music for a few hours. I called my dad, and he answered, "What's up? I have a bunch of work stuff going on, and I can't talk." And I said, "Well, but my water broke." And he totally thought I was trying to pull one on him, because the night before, we'd been talking on the phone, about what he remembered about my mom's birth with me and whether her water broke before or after contractions. So he totally thought I was pulling his leg. He said later it was also because there was no panic in my voice, just excitement. Then I FaceTimed my sister, and I knew it still wasn't too bad because I was still talking through it, but it was starting to get pretty uncomfortable. I moved from my couch to the bed and was rocking back and forth during contractions. Earlier on, I was so excited and happy to be in labor, and I didn't even think about my hypnobirthing track. But once the contractions got a little bit more intense, I remembered that, I should probably listen to that so I can handle them once they get more intense. And yeah, they didn't work. I think I let it go too long. The contractions were taking me out of it, and I was getting kind of frustrated while listening to it, so it was getting counterintuitive. I wanted to be super chill and happy, so I went back to listening to some good music and just hanging out. Now, by this time, my midwife is arriving. This is around 2:30. She came in and said hi and brought in all of her supplies. Man, it was so comforting to have her there that I must have had like a surge of oxytocin, and contractions started getting way more intense. She put a TENS machine on my back, and that felt really amazing in the beginning. For those of you who don't know, a TENS machine works by sending electrical pulses to sticky pads on your lower back. She put them on my lower back around my hips and gave me a remote to control how intense I wanted the pulses to be, and it really helped. If nothing else, the pulses distracted me from how the contractions felt, and each time they got more intense, I could control how much more intense the pulses could be. I think I remember reading that there was some kind of other theory behind it, but that's how it felt for me. About an hour later, my husband got home, and I was so happy because I wasn't sure like how far along I was, but it felt like things were getting pretty intense, and I obviously wanted him there. And also he brought all this ice cream and some honey too, and I knew I needed that in between contractions. By now, my eyes were closed, and I was moaning through each contraction. I wasn't talking, I was just like, moaning. They were lasting about 60 seconds, which I'm pretty sure is normal, and a few minutes apart, which, wow, was such a blessing. What a great break you get in between. I was telling myself, I can do anything for 60 seconds, and they were really not too bad, but not gonna lie, it hurt. My pelvis felt like it was opening up, and I was very sensitive to everything going on. Michelle went out of the room for a second, and then I had a stronger contraction. I was like, Michelle, help. The contractions had officially gotten stronger than the TENS machine, and I wanted that thing off of me. She also did some hip squeezes, which is supposed to give some good counter pressure, and that felt amazing, up until it didn't. I was on our mattress on all fours, but leaning on a pile of blankets and pillows, so she would come up behind me and squeeze. My knees were farther apart, and she suggested to put them together to open up my pelvis, but wow, I did that one time and not again because it made the contractions so much more intense. I think it actually would have helped things go faster, but things were going so fast already. It was so nice having her there to help me. I really needed her presence and her saying that I could do it. It really helped when she said, this one's almost done, only 30 seconds left, you can do it. Now at this point, I don't even know what time it is. I'm totally out of it. She suggested my husband fill up the bathtub, and I jumped in right away. The water felt amazing on my belly. The contractions were all around my torso, and I was back on all fours in the tub, my belly hanging in the water. I also had some combs Michelle gave me that I was holding in my hands to do acupressure with. The idea behind them is that when you squeeze the teeth into your palms, the signal from that is higher than the pain signal from your contractions. It felt pretty good, but I was pretty far along at this point, so it wasn't mind-blowing or anything like that. The water, though, that was mind-blowing. When I'd gotten into the tub, time had stopped existing for me. I don't know how long I'd been in the tub for, but my thoughts started getting kind of weird. I started thinking, I need to get out of here. I need to run. And like darker thoughts like, am I even going to be a good mom? Or like, am I going to like being a mom? Am I too selfish to be a mom? A little bit late for those thoughts right now, right? Luckily, Michelle had told me that it was totally normal to be having those weird thoughts during labor, especially right before transition. And that was the most exciting thing for me. When I had those thoughts, I thought, yay, it's almost over. And I yelled, someone get me a bowl. I'm going to throw up. My husband held a bowl under my face while I was hanging out of the tub, and I threw up. Then, all of a sudden, remember how I said the hip squeezes and TENS machine felt amazing until it really didn't? Yep, that's what happened with the water too. I was like, you gotta get me out of this tub. And he pulled me out and I started squatting on the bathroom floor. He was behind me, stabilizing me, and Michelle asked me if I wanted to try the birthing stool. But for some reason, sitting on that birthing stool, it's like a big seat with a hole in it so the baby can come out and can be caught. It felt awful to put any weight on. I think my daughter's head was just so close to my tailbone that any pressure down there was too much. Even in the past couple weeks before, I was not able to sit properly, like I was only able to sit on my birthing ball, not on the couch. So I just needed to squat normally, my husband stabilizing me from behind and Michelle in front of me, and I needed to push. I've never felt such an urge before. It was so crazy. I started feeling her coming down and I started screaming, the most animal scream I ever made in my whole life. Not like a, but like a battle cry, guttural yell. In between them, I thought to myself, oh, I hope I'm not freaking them out. Ah! Oh, I hope the windows are closed so the neighbors don't call 911. My midwife was telling me, maybe you should slow down, make sure you don't tear. And I said, I can't. But honestly, part of me probably could have. I just didn't want to. The idea of slowing things down when I didn't know how fast the baby was actually coming out, it wasn't even an option. I put my hand down there to feel, and I felt her head coming out. It felt so weird and like soft because when their heads are coming out, the skin is going to get all squished. Finally, there was just one more push, and she was totally out. I saw my baby daughter for the first time, and I was so confused how the act that makes babies made this baby. Michelle caught her and gave her to me, and I was like, what the heck? She directed me to suck on her nose and mouth to get anything out, but nothing came out, and she was crying really well already. My husband and I were so blown away. I was so surprised she was a girl. For some reason, I just totally thought it was going to be a boy the whole pregnancy. I was crying. I was thanking God that she was so healthy and perfect. She was so cute right out of the womb. My midwife took a couple pictures and came back in to say that she was born at 5:42 p.m. So I went into active labor a bit after 3:30 when my husband got home. So actual active labor was like 2 hours, and the point of me throwing up at transition to her being in our arms was probably like 3 minutes max. She ripped right out of me. After the nice thoughts of, oh wow, she's so sweet, and the absolute high that I felt, which is completely indescribable, more intense than any drug I've ever taken, I thought, I think we might be one and done. That really hurt. Now it's 3 months later and I'm ready to do it again. I'm yearning to do it again. Thinking about it gets me all pumped up because it was absolutely exhilarating, and now I want to do it again. So after a few minutes of resting on the floor, we got up and I waddled over to the bed to lay down. We didn't want to cut her cord until it was totally white, and for some reason it was a little short, so I had to carry her a little low down while I waddled with this weird cord in between my legs. When I went into the bathroom once with her still attached, my cat finally came in after hiding under the couch. She sniffed around, left, came back, sniffed around, ran into the kitchen, and threw up on our floor. First thing she did when she met my daughter. Thanks, Juno. Button, our dog, was hiding in my husband's office, and we saw a little later that she peed in there, probably during the pushing stage. She must have been totally terrified from my screaming. Now, this is where I would change things. My midwife and I didn't get to have our last appointment together before the birth because my daughter was a bit early, and at that appointment, Michelle usually warns against FaceTiming and calling people until after the third stage of labor is done, which is the birth of the placenta. When we went into the room, we pretty much immediately started calling people to let them know how it went, and I think that did kind of take me out of the mental space of giving birth and made me think that everything was over, but it wasn't. I was still having some light contractions, but the placenta wasn't coming out. Now, the placenta birthing process taking a while is normal, but like many things in the system, it has become pathologized. If I was in a hospital, this is when they would have freaked out and gave me the synthetic hormone Pitocin, which is a really awful drug to make the placenta come out. They usually want it out within 30 minutes, which is not necessary at all. Luckily, Michelle is really knowledgeable about that. After a while of talking and soaking up that new baby love and breastfeeding for the first time, she suggested I pee. Well, I didn't have any feeling down there. I couldn't feel if my bladder was full or anything, and I tried to pee, but nothing happened. Whenever I looked at my daughter, I would feel some light contractions, so I just tried staring at her for a while. Michelle then gave me some homeopathic remedies to try and get me to pee, and then a couple hours later, some tinctures. Sophie's cord still wasn't cut, but it was pure white and like super alien looking by then, so we decided to cut it. My husband cut the cord, and I have a video of it. I love looking at it. And I was free to move around a bit more and to have my baby cuddle closer to my face than lower down. I kept breastfeeding, going to the bathroom to try and pee, etc. It's probably around 9 p.m. at this point, and the sun is going down. I'm getting a bit nervous because I don't want to have to go to the hospital after such an awesome experience birthing, right? But Michelle reassured me. I did ask her, though, as my friend, will you do a catheter? Please. I just could not pee, and I was super sore. She got everything prepared. I tried washing myself off because the blood had like clotted and dried, and she went to town. I'm so grateful now, but in the moment, wow, that hurt so bad. I think it might have hurt worse than labor at certain points. When she was doing it, I asked her if she thought I tore it all, and she saw a 2nd-degree tear on the side. Not up or down, but horizontal. When she made it to my bladder, It emptied. I felt better because there wasn't any pressure down there anymore, but the placenta still didn't come out. I think at this point she gave me some more homeopathic remedies and tinctures to promote contractions. Then it was like 10 to 11 and she suggested I get some sleep. We were all exhausted. We prayed for a successful ending to the birth process, had a beautiful first night with our daughter, and then around 1 a.m. I woke up to more intense contractions. Michelle suggested I get into the tub and pull the tiniest bit to see what happens. I got into the tub, and while having a contraction, I sneezed, I peed, and I pulled on the cord, and bam, the placenta came out. Finally, what a relief. This is probably 1 a.m., so how long is that? That's like almost 8 hours. What a relief. I think I must have had some kind of mental block because I realized I was terrified of the pain of birthing it, and it did hurt. I could feel the tear when it came out. It was nasty, but it was out, and I was so happy for it to be over. I was pretty sore though, so I took a Tylenol for the first time in literally years. As for the tear, it was 2nd degree, but I didn't get any stitches. They can cause more problems later on. They can make sex painful a lot more. And mine healed perfectly fine. You can't even tell, apparently. So after I birthed the placenta, I went straight back to my bed, to my Vernix-covered baby. My midwife took care of us for a bit longer, and then she headed home. And that's the birth story. It was hard but straightforward. It was bloody and kind of gross, but absolutely beautiful. And I didn't poop when I was pushing, and that's something I'm very happy about. Thank you for indulging me. I truly love talking about my birth story. And now we're going to get into the Q&A portion. You guys had some great ones. First question is, I had a few people ask me, what do contractions feel like? And all I can describe is what they felt like to me. I had a few people say, well, that's not what they felt like to me. So, take this with a grain of salt. You know that feeling that you ate too much hot sauce and now it's deep in your bowels? Yeah, that's how it felt. At first it was like, oh, I might have overdone it with the sriracha last night for 60 seconds. But later on it's like, whoa. And all I can say about that is that it feels like your hips are opening up to give birth to a baby. What was the first thing you ate after giving birth? My midwife made me some amazing chicken fried rice with some roast chicken we had in the fridge, bone broth rice I had made before, and eggs, and it was so good and exactly what I needed in that moment. Nothing tasted as good before or since. Did you have any herbs on hand just in case? I did not personally. I haven't really gone in depth with herbal medicine yet. That's definitely something I'm looking into right now though. So I wouldn't even know what to have on hand, but my midwife did have her supply of tinctures, homeopathic remedies, etc. I'll ask her what she keeps with her when I have her on the podcast soon. How long was your labor? So my water broke around 8, and that's when I would say it started because I couldn't say if I was having contractions before that because I was asleep. So 9 hours if you count early labor, 9.5 I guess. I barely do because it was so gentle. The actual intense part lasted about 5 hours, and active labor and pushing were a much shorter amount of time. Was it easier or harder than expected? It was easier in that it was more straightforward and more instinctual than I expected. The way that I was able to move and act made it much more comfortable, but it was also harder in that I had no idea what it would feel like, and it did push me to my limits. I did not have a painless birth, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Someone asked who was in the room with me. Just me, my husband, and Michelle. It's a good thing we had a pretty good sized bathroom though, because it was all 3 of us in there. I thought before that I might have had my friends over, but I realized during that it would have been a mistake. I'm kind of self-conscious, so it would have taken me out of the feeling of calm that I was very happy to have. Someone asked if I felt an immediate bond with her right after birth. Yes, but it also wasn't like what I was expecting. It was more of an insane infatuation with how tiny and adorable she was and how I needed to protect her at all costs. Over a few days, that subsided more into a real, loving bond, and now it feels like we have a real relationship, still with that instinct of, I need to protect her at all costs. Someone else asked, how important do you think prepping for birth is? Well, it's just like how the adage goes, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. You don't know how birth is going to feel until you're in the thick of it, but you can prepare mentally to not be scared of pain or discomfort. You also need to prepare for the kind of birth that you want. There are so many things fighting against having a natural birth that you need to be aware of and be prepared to fight against. I'm glad I did as much preparation as I did because even though I wasn't prepared for how it would feel, or for postpartum, which I should have prepared more for, I was prepared to go with the flow of birth despite how it would feel. It also stopped me from being scared. Usually pain to me is like a scary thing, like, oh, something's wrong. But because I knew that it was going to hurt during labor, I wasn't fearful at all. Someone asked, how did you feel emotionally and what were your thoughts during birth? Emotionally, I was almost a bit high. In the beginning, I felt really calm and excited, and as things progressed, I felt really focused. I think the lack of panicky or impersonal people around me, like there would have been in a hospital, helped a lot. Michelle is a super calm person who has seen tons of births, so I felt safe having her there, and my husband wasn't pacing or anything. He's also a very even keel guy. He said the screaming part was disturbing, but before that, he was totally cool, and when I was screaming, I wasn't paying attention to anybody else. My thoughts during the birth did get dark at certain points, right before transition, but that was normal and natural, and I'm glad I knew that beforehand. Did you have a just-in-case plan? Yes, but it was a really just-in-case plan. Like, not much would have gotten me to go to the hospital unless it was truly an emergency and my daughter was truly at risk in a real way. The system often tries to fearmonger with things like the cord being around the baby's neck or a breech. But if you have a skilled midwife who has assisted mothers who delivered babies in those scenarios, they're rarely an issue. I had a piece of paper that my husband would have brought if need be that basically said, you save the baby's life and nothing else. No eye gels, no shots, no nothing, or I'll sue or come after you myself. And luckily that wasn't needed because I wrote that in the heat of a pregnancy crazy hormone, so. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate you and really hope you got something out of it. Follow the show on whatever platform you're listening on. New episodes are coming out every Friday, and follow me on Instagram to know when they're ready and uploaded. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me on Instagram. It's @HealthyHealthyHolly, and I'll try my best to help. Talk to you next time. Bye!